sexual-specific activism to ensure the formulation of a strategy for creating a national bisexual-focused agenda, and to institute a grassroots campaign to organize and train bisexual activists. As far as I'm aware, no organization has cogently or systematically identified and engaged bi activists at local, regional, and national levels, nor has one provided resources for development of bisexual organizations in any measure comparable to the level of organization around gay men and lesbian issues. And I don't want to distract from it, but it's also true that the trans organizing
right.
is much more advanced, and transgender media is
sure.
way far ahead of the bisexual community.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. It's assumed when you cover gay and straight that you automatically cover everybody in between, and it's just not true.
Right.
Right.
And some of us fall into more than one group.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So.
True. Aside from recent notable efforts, national gay and lesbian leaders have attended to bi issues in disproportion to the actual size of the population. Gay male and lesbian leadership has ignored and discounted bi and trans activists standing as outspoken GLBT dissenters in the sexual minorities civil rights battle for far too long. Consider that from the hundreds of activists invited to the White House several weeks ago to meet with President Obama, there was just one with a bisexuality organizational affiliation, Robin Oakes, who is a colleague of mine, and one transgender organization affiliation listing. Now, we are aware that there were more trans activists there, and presumably some other bi activists of whom I'm not aware, but still.
They didn't get billing.
Right, exactly. At present,
the number which may as well be invisible.
It may as well be, right. True. At present, the number of resources devoted to bi grassroots organization activism is disproportionately small compared to the resource pool available for gay, lesbian causes and organizations. Much more is needed to bring the B up to speed with the L, G, and T segments. National GLBTIQ organizations that want to support the bisexual community must add B and T if they use G and L in their organization name, or rebrand some other way that is inclusive of bi people and trans people. Second, identify, recruit, train, and empower current and future bi leadership. 3, help fund and organize BiNet, American Institute of Bisexuality, and the Bi Resource Center, which are the 3 largest bisexual organizations in the country, into fully operational national resources and/or help to organize them to be stronger. Help fund a private venture for a national major bi-focused media outlet. Target more cross-sex married, otherwise known as Kinsey 3 type bi activists. Most bi activists are Kinsey 5s, but we need people who are seen more like mainstream. I mean, we need more bi activists from across the spectrum, but that in particular, I think needs to be developed. And in closing, I said, if the big dogs can let the slow one catch up, then they can all run together a whole lot faster. Thanks for your time in considering these comments.
Yeah.
So
very nice.
Well, thank you. I am very disappointed that Ms. Carey has not been able to find the time to communicate with me, but I hope that this message does get through to her. And I appreciate your letting me share it with your audience.
One thing before we get too far away from this, maybe for our audience, you could talk a little bit about the Kinsey scale, and if there's anybody out there
that's probably news to a lot of them.
There
you want to take a couple minutes, and if you can do that,
it's a little, I guess a little bit of an inside reference. Alfred Kinsey was a sexologist who pioneered sex research in the country, and he in his 2 Kinsey reports, one for men and one for women, he came up with a different way of looking at sexuality other than you're straight or you're gay.
Yeah.
What he proposed was that there was a scale, and to look at sexuality as a gradated spectrum, being from Kinsey 0, from 0 on the scale to 6. 0 being completely, utterly, absolutely heterosexual, and 6 being completely, utterly homosexual.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most people actually fall somewhere in between the two,
Right.
you know, and because, you know, as far as most studies, sexuality studies have indicated that probably about half of the adult population in sometime in their life has some form of same-sex sexual contact, extensive.
Sure.
And so there are a lot of people who, over the course of their lifetime, you know, move to different parts of the scale.
Right.
So it's a, you know, it not only shows that sexuality is actually very fluid, you know, among a population. He also demonstrated that it can change over time, and does for many people.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I hope that's, hope
And
that's
it's-
cleared up.
Sure, and I think what we'll add, because you've talked about this, you've instructed me on it, that in general discourse in modern times on the Kinsey scale, they usually refer to 0 and 1 together as the heterosexual, 5 and 6 as homosexual, and bisexual as 2, 3, and 4. Which, you know, just on the scale itself, I like to point out that there's more space for bisexuals in the scale than there is any other group.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's probably
Well-
a bell curve. It's probably some kind of a bell curve, and so
Or-
very few people are on the extreme.
Or a double hump or something. But
Yeah.
Well,
don't
it's
know.
probably closer to a reverse bell curve. People tend to, most, you know,
gravitate towards the ends.
gravitate to
but-
one,
yeah.
you know, one end of the scale or the other.
Well, and that's certainly, I mean, Callie and I have both been honest on the show about being bisexual. And you know, certainly one of the questions at any of the talks we've given when you tell them you're bisexual that they want to ask is, well, don't you favor one over the other? You can't be the fence sitter, can you? And Kinsey says, yeah, you can. It's not a lot of people, but there's a 3. There's an honest-to-God 3
Right.
on the scale from 0 to 6.
Right. But I mean, the whole notion of, you know, people always, that is an interesting, you know, point that people bring up. You know, well, do you have to be engaged with one of each sex at the same time to be fulfilled?
Right.
And
That's another good one.
And that's another myth that, you know,
No.
that is not true.
I like monogamous relationships.
There's right, exactly. You know,
I just don't limit my options.
Right.
right.
And it's funny because I have been asked that. I had a man.
That's
I know,
right.
Dan, who could not fathom.
He was afraid you'd run off with a woman.
He could not fathom that I could be happy with just him. And I think there might
That's
have-
self-esteem, I think
that-
more than...
Yeah, but he
Or
just
something else.
Yeah, he absolutely couldn't grasp that. Yes, I can be with one or the other. I'm not sure it really matters to me which, but I can be satisfied with one person. I only want to be with one person.
Yeah.
And he couldn't understand that. It blew